Good morning, folks on YouTube and Periscope. We are now live, but I've got a moment or two where I have to get some things going before we start the program, so please bear with me if you're already joining. Facebook is coming online. We're waiting on that. In fact, it may already be online. Facebook is online. Folks, if you're joining me on Facebook, YouTube, or Periscope, just bear with me for 1 second. We're going to start in just a moment. Facebook is online, folks. If you're joining me on Facebook, All right, we are on all four now: YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, and Instagram. Folks, today we are doing the Create and Engage live video and podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Mike Murphy of Mike Unplugged. I'm going to do a proper intro in just a moment. Let me get a couple things going here. I've got like one more or two more buttons to push, and we are doing it, my friends. Thank you for joining me this morning. All right, folks, welcome to the Todd.LIVE Create and Engage podcast and live video. Today I have a very special guest, Mike Murphy of Mike Unplugged, or Mike Murphy Co. He is an online creator, educator, teacher, inspirer. He is somewhat of a jack of all trades as far as tech and software, and I mean, you name it, he is doing it. He got a start on Blab a couple years ago, maybe got started even sooner. We'll talk about that, but he is an interesting person. I found him on Instagram a number of months ago, and I quickly realized that he has a really good thing going. He creates educational content that is just above and beyond what you see most people doing, and it's the nuts and bolts of how to do things. For instance, on Instagram, every day when I wake up, and I think the algorithm has me figured out that I really am fond of Mike's content, I'm always greeted immediately. The very first thing on my feed when I go into Instagram is a Mike Murphy piece of content where it's a small video series where he's teaching me how to use, a lot of the times it's Adobe software, sometimes it's ScreenFlow. I mean, there's all sorts of tools that he learns and teaches himself and then helps other people figure out. And he's just fantastic, and I'm delighted to have him on the program. Let's go ahead and bring him in. Mike, there you are. How you doing, my friend?
I am great. Thank you for having me, and thanks for all the kind words. I appreciate it.
Well, I'll tell you, it's just as sincere as can be, and I love that Instagram has figured out to put you front and center when I log in the morning, and it does. I mean, I've noticed that now for the last week that you are there every morning, and it seems to me that you're doing daily content on Instagram. That is the case, correct?
That is the case for almost 2 years straight. I haven't missed a day. It's I'm like, and yeah, the day I launched my podcast, which is in September of 2015, I started creating daily content, and I haven't missed a day since. So I don't know if I'll go past the 2-year mark, but as of now, I'm on a roll. So
that's awesome. Now, is it daily on multiple platforms, or is Instagram where you really focus your daily efforts?
When I first started doing it, I was taking a lot of photos. I've been in the photography business prior to kind of doing an online thing. So I was taking a lot of photos of gear, microphones, and stuff like that for the first, so, I'd say the first year or so. Then starting last fall, I started doing more videos and posting them on Instagram. And so I'd say about since November, I have created a video nearly every day, which is tough. I mean, I put myself in a little bit of a tough cycle here. I like the consistency. I'm very into that, the reliability and showing up every day. The videos every day it's tough, but it's something that keeps me going for sure. It's an important part of my routine.
Well, absolutely. And consistency, I think, is key with anything online for sure. Let's kind of back up and talk about how you got started in this initially. You and I are probably roughly the same age, so I imagine, and of course, we were around before the internet existed, so you haven't been doing this since you got out of high school. So what brought you to the online space? What was the thing that did it, and when did that happen?
I mean, I've always been sort of tech minded and curious, I guess. I've always had a creative side and always had a tech side. And I am, I'd say so for about 9 years, I was managing a photography studio, and I was literally had to learn everything. And it was like a dream come true for me because I'm a total learner. I take so many tutorials and classes. So I'd spend my entire day working, and there'd be a podcast in the background and a lynda.com class, and I was just constantly learning how to work the network, work this, do all the Adobe programs. I was the designer, the marketer, so I had to do all the things that we all have to do today online. So I just would learn these things, and I was just filling my head with all this, like, I mean, I was like overflowing with stuff, and I'd forget it as fast as I'd learn it. Like, I don't remember everything that I learned, but I just keep learning it. And so then it kind of drove me nuts, to be honest with you. I had too much stuff just coming in. I was just consuming, and I was working and doing it all. But so I wanted to get online and just start teaching and just, I don't know, just getting it out there. Like I've always been the person that people come to, like, hey, Mike, how do I do this with my iPad? How do I do this with my iPhone? I've always been that fixer of small things, like, friends have always come to me, family and that. So I just said, you know what? I really want to teach. I want to just get all this stuff out. And so I just started doing it. And the tutorials were a very natural fit for me. I mean, it's what I really wanted to do from the beginning. I just didn't know really how to make it work. So.
Now, was there anybody in the space when you got started, and I'm wondering what year you got started, but was there anybody out there that inspired you that maybe you had stumbled upon and really enjoyed what they did, and it kind of allowed you to envision where you would go with your routine?
You know, it's amazing, like, because I've been taking tutorials online, and a lot of them have been Photoshop. So I've been really into the whole lynda.com. Creative Live has been a huge inspiration for me. I don't know if you're familiar with Creative Live. They're very, like, they were very photography heavy, but kind of moved into all sorts of different things. So a lot of the teachers that were teaching Photoshop and the Adobe products, I've just been taking for years. And there wasn't any, like, business model that I was following. Like, I'm still in that stage where I'm completely figuring out how this all works as a business for me. Like, I'm doing everything that I'm liking and doing and wanting, but it's still, I'm still in the putting the pieces together for sure in terms of, making this really sustainable for me. But in terms of teaching, yeah, I've been inspired by just all the, like, lynda.com people. They're so professional about how they teach. So I'm very in tune with how I learn and how I think is effective. My videos are very short, as you probably notice, and that's because I know people's time is really tough. I try my best to do a short tutorial, but have it filled with enough stuff that they're not going to be like I really want them to take something away from it, but I also don't want them to have to spend, tons of time doing it. So.
Sure. Why did you choose Instagram as a place to put this content on a daily basis?
Well, I mean, I'm very into photography. So it was visually, I'd spend lots of time on Instagram just scrolling through designers and hand letters, and pretty much everyone in design and anyone visual. I love just good art and good creative juice. So Instagram was such an easy fit for me just because I loved it. But when I started, I mean, I really kind of didn't really start an online presence until like 2015, I would say. And so not that long ago. And I didn't have a lot of social media profiles. I was really, I started Instagram kind of late in life in terms of, how everyone else was. And even Facebook, I had stopped my Facebook years before. I had it probably when it first came out. And I just said, I didn't even like Facebook for a while. And, yeah, so when I came back on, Instagram was like such a natural fit for me just because I loved looking at all the visuals. And then I just started creating.
Now, when you got started on Instagram, was there any video capability or was it all picture at the time?
There was video. It was 1 minute, and I wasn't doing a lot of video at all. Again, I was doing mostly photography. I took a lot of pictures of microphones. I was doing a lot of gear stuff, pretty much all podcast equipment, because I was really focused on kind of teaching podcasting when I first came out, and teaching audio because that's what I was learning. I basically teach the things that I'm going through. That's kind of the way that I've structured everything. Like if I'm heavy into learning audio and podcasting, like that's what I'm going to be teaching in my podcast, and that's what I'm going to be focusing all my content on. And as I evolve and move, I fought that for a long time because I was really like, you got to pick something and go with it. But if you look at my feed for any length of time, you probably have a hard time understanding what it is that I focus on. Yet in my head, I feel like it's all kind of related, but I can't pick one thing and just go with it. So as I evolve, I teach that, and I feel like I stay in the wheelhouse though of what people are needing to do today. Like that's my main focus, is sort of getting a collective of what the content creators and personal brands are needing to do, and I'm sticking. I teach that little.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I think that first of all, your mission seems to be to help the online entrepreneur or just entrepreneurs in general who want to have some sort of an online presence figure out the tools, particularly the basics of the various tools involved. And the fact is, and I'm sure you agree with this, there's not any one tool. I mean, Adobe has like 20 different things because 20 different things are needed for people at the level that,
Yes.
for those offerings. So if you're wanting to do videos, you're going to have to use ScreenFlow or Camtasia, or you're going to have to pick some stuff. If you're wanting to do Instagram content and you're wanting to jazz up this or that, you're going to have to pick a few things, and there's not any one thing to cover it all. And what I think that you do, and what I find so interesting about what you do, is you help people kind of get a foothold on a variety of things, and even whether they know that these things are something they might need to use or not, you're alerting them to the fact that this is something you could use to do this, something that people may not even realize that they have at their disposal. This is the program for this. And so I think it's interesting what you're doing, and I think it's unique, and I think it's going to work for you, quite honestly.
I hope so. I mean, that is the plan for sure. Again, though, that is what I'm trying to do in terms of people. Again, it's like things that I know that I'd need, and things that I know I laugh when people ask me, what tool do you use to do that? Like people would go crazy if they actually if they stood over my shoulder every day and watched the amount of tools that I use to do the simplest things. There is no one tool for anybody. And I think people realize that quite easily, or quite, quickly, because it's why people get frustrated and they don't end up doing video, or video is hard. I do it every day and it's still hard. I mean, even people that know what they're doing, it's just because you have to jump around. You have to do different things, and you have to have multiple skill sets, I think, to do sometimes just the simplest things. So I try to pick out those big things, and I try to pick out those things. Like sometimes I'll have a tutorial that I'm thinking about doing, and I'll think it through and say, nobody's going to need this, or nobody's going to be using this, so it's a waste of my time to teach it. I mean, the way I see it, like if it's just something to teach just for the sake of creating something, I try to stay away from that. I really try to stick to something that people might actually use on a day-to-day basis, or further down the road. So
absolutely. Now, do you use any other social media platforms heavily the way I see you as an Instagram guy, and I think that's painting you into, me painting you into a corner, because I know that you're much more than that. You've got a YouTube channel that's doing very well. You've got Facebook page. You're on Twitter. I mean, you do other things. So if it seems like I limit you to Instagram, or I kind of make you the Instagram guy, I apologize. I know you're doing much more, but where else are you putting good content on a regular basis that people would be interested in?
Well, I think I associate myself with Instagram the closest. I think I'm fair at everything, to be honest with you, in terms of social media, the way I do it. I'm so content heavy in terms of how much I make that I have to remind myself that these are social. So I'm not great in the social element. I try really hard. I want to be more like active and conversational, but I struggle with that for sure. So Instagram is where I do the most. It's where I interact the most. And but I really want to build my YouTube channel. It wasn't something that I was really started out thinking, but it is something that it's a natural fit for me. I mean, I love the whole, like, I really want to get into the video space of tutorials. So YouTube is something I really am going to kind of double down on a little bit. I write on medium.com, and it's totally random. It's like my journal of random. I mean, you might think that I was a mad scientist sometimes on Medium, because I started just writing really at the top of my head just to get myself the discipline of writing. I was a writer a long time ago. I was like an English major, so I was really like trying to put myself back into writing. So I would write about everything. If I looked at my entire body of work on Medium, which is a couple hundred articles now, it is really all over the place. Sometimes it's tutorials, sometimes it's this, but I don't even care. Like, I just literally, like, I like to create stuff. I like to do stuff. I don't apologize if it's not in my zone. I just make stuff, So like that to me is like, it's a problem for some people, I think, that I'm, not so disciplined about like some, my exact stuff. But yet I think it's the way like I'm very like open to how I'm doing things. So like, and I'm not pretending to be, perfect about all this stuff. So yeah, medium is important to me in terms of like, it's something that I really want to shift a little bit and get a little bit more like writer heavy, or, like a little bit more inspirational, motivational, because that's a big part of what I do as well. I think I can do a better job on Medium, and it's something that I would like to do a better job on. And Facebook is something that, I mean, Facebook's here to stay. Like, I mean, I'm not ignoring Facebook, and I do my best to dip in and out of the podcast communities and answer questions and be helpful, and because Facebook is going to be a big player for a long time.
Oh, so, yeah. Absolutely. Our mutual friend Ross Brand has joined. He joined us a while ago, but he said the quality of the content Mike creates is so high, and I can't agree with that anymore. I mean, it is. And folks, if you go and check out Mike, he's Mike Unplugged on Instagram. Check out what he's doing, and make sure that when you watch or select one of his pieces of content, that there's the feature where you can slide. There almost always is more than the first slide that you see. And that's what's so interesting. He'll do 2 or 3 slides in a row, whether it's video or photo, but I think mostly it's video, as he said. And he fits an amazing amount of content in a very small package. And the production value is extremely high. I find it very inspiring. It's intriguing, and it's even, it's like, I think, could I do anything like that? I mean, it's just amazing, the work that he does in these little bite-sized capsules that are available each day. Folks, just a really quick recap. This is a quadcast. We're on Instagram Live, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Periscope. I cannot monitor comments on YouTube Live, but I can monitor them on Periscope, Facebook, and Instagram Live. So if you want to leave a comment or a question, feel free. The other thing is I will apologize to any Instagram Live people. There is a sound delay because of the way Instagram Live works. I can't send a signal directly into it the way I do the other services. So there's probably a 5-second or 7-second delay between what you hear me say and when you see my mouth say it. So I apologize for that, and I appreciate you for sticking with me on Instagram. I get a lot of good engagement on Instagram. Today, not so well. I don't know. Usually I have a lot of people on Instagram. Today, it's very quiet. Mike, let's talk about your, and folks, before I get into the next item, we do have Mike Murphy of Mike Unplugged. On some venues, he's going to be found as Mike Murphy C-O, and on some venues, he's Mike Unplugged, but he is an easy guy to track down. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram is the big one. He just said Medium. He's written a lot of articles on Medium, so if you want to look him up there. So, Mike, getting back to you and what you're doing, let's talk about your podcast, because I love podcasting. I'm going to see you next month, unless your plans have changed, in Anaheim at Podcast Movement, which is my first. Is it your first?
First Podcast Movement. Yep. I missed last year. So.
And it moves around, doesn't it? I think hasn't it been in Florida before? I think they moved.
Well, there's a podcast festival in Florida that I have been to twice now, which is great. It's PodFest.
Okay.
And, that is in Florida. And then the podcast movement has been in, I forgot where it was last year. I was supposed to go last year. It's been in Texas one year. I forgot where last year's was, but I think they're going to be in maybe Philadelphia next year, somewhere in the East Coast next year. So.
Well, I love having it in my backyard, and I'm really going to be excited to see you there. I've heard that Podcast Movement is an outstanding show. I don't know what level ticket you got. I got the big one because I wanted to have access to the room where all the movers and shakers are hanging out. I figured that's a good thing to do. Tell us about your podcast.
My podcast is called Mike Murphy Unplugged. Last week was my 100th episode, which I was, quite proud of.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was a big deal going to 100. A podcast is tough, for sure. I do it every Friday at 6 a.m. it comes out, and so I haven't missed a week. So that last week was episode 100, and it's a 15-minute show. It's a solo show. I don't have guests on it. It's just me teaching one lesson usually a week. I usually just pick something. It started off very podcast heavy. How to run a podcast, the equipment, all that stuff. And again, it's similar to the stuff that I teach and do. As I'm going through something, that week's lesson or that week's whole episode is going to be about, something related to creating online content, technology, social media, business. I struggle with the business side of things probably the most in terms of, I have the creativity. I can do that all day, but it's the stuff that, that a lot of people love or don't love. The business side of things, sometimes I struggle with. So as I work through something of that, or if I have, something I think will help other people who might be struggling, I'm going on the theory that the people that are listening and that are learning from it are people going along the same path as me, so it's kind of sharing my journey as I build this online business and brand, and I just teach it along the way. So I use my podcast as that platform, and I'd say my podcast is the thing that keeps me the most grounded and it's like my biggest pillar. It's probably my biggest responsibility, I would say, online. It's a thing that really I don't mess with. I really take it seriously because it's tough. You show up week after week and people are expecting you probably to get better each week. And, it's just something I take really seriously. And it's tough though, it's definitely, but I think it's so worth it to have. And I look at it as a big body of work that I'm going to be really proud of one day,
I think you already are, and rightfully so. I mean, to do 100 episodes is huge. Going back to when you were preparing to start your podcast, how did you learn how to even get it going? And the reason I ask that is when I got started in online, I started with the video end of it, and I kept bumping the podcast because I knew it was going to take me a lot of time to figure out the equipment. I knew it was going to take me a lot of time to figure out the RSS and how to get it moving in various directions. And I didn't know if it was something that I could teach myself. And I ultimately took Cliff Ravenscraft's Podcast A to Z class because I wanted to just, after doing the video end of it, I was like, there's no way I'm spending 6-7 months figuring out the audio. In 30 days and $2,000 or whatever, I can be done with it. And that's what happened. So I'm just wondering how you got started with the equipment and the software and the online, the routing of the RSS and everything. And did you get any help with it yourself the way I did?
No, but I'm a fan of Cliff. I'm sure you learned a lot from him. I probably listened to some of his podcasts. You know, I definitely, leading up to it, I would say I've listened to podcasts since they first came out. I never really thought about starting one, but I really was like an early listener when they first started coming out. It's been a part of me for a while. I've always been sort of into them. I didn't really plan on doing one, even though it was a good fit, you know, in hindsight. And so learning up to it, you know, I kind of did like, I think I listened to like John Lee Dumas had like the free eight class thing and on iTunes. I think I listened to that. I probably watched the Pat Flynn tutorial that sort of everybody gets pushed to watch, and I think it's got great information. I really have this like I don't want it to sound weird, but like I actually love like the challenge of figuring things like that out. Like it doesn't faze me when I have to learn something, and I know I'm not even that good with like the DIY stuff necessarily. I just like things like that, the tech stuff that I need to learn. I just know that I'm just going to just do it. So I don't really dwell on that. Like I didn't know what I was doing. Like it took me a while to get, the equipment set up, and I didn't really know how to use Audition, even though I was familiar with the Adobe stuff. So like I did not know what I was doing, but I also, that stuff doesn't really bother me to jump in and do it either. Like I just learn what I need to do. I kind of jump to the tutorials. If I need to learn something in Audition, I just go watch something. And then it's repetition. I think it's that way for everybody. Like you can learn as much as you want, but until you just start pushing all the buttons over and over and over again, like you're never going to learn it or remember it. So like it took me, my first bunch of episodes were terrible. And like the sound wasn't as good as I wanted, and it just, nobody's is, I think you just have to just jump in and kind of go for it. So in answer your question, I did take, I think I took enough tutorials, but it wasn't, that part had nothing to, like, I was not afraid of that part of it in starting a podcast. It was more like, do I have the time, the commitment, am I going to sound okay? Am I, do I know what I'm talking about? I had the self-doubt stuff probably more than a technical doubt for sure.
Well, as far on the technical side, I think that the way you do it is good, because I think you learn the how and why things work together. For instance, you've got a podcast studio, you've got a microphone, and I don't know what other equipment you have in there, but if you have a mixer, if you have like I have a compressor, limiter, audio gate. It's like a 3-in-1 package. And I imagine you've got some stuff back there too. So I have a Scarlett. I see a lot of Scarletts when I see people doing live video. And I use the Scarlett strictly to convert the sound out of the mixer from whatever cable's coming out of the mixer into a USB. We all have the equipment, and I think when you do it your way, as opposed to the way I did it, and I did it your way for the video, but I jumped to the audio. I just had to get to Z at some point, but you learn the how and why, and it really allows you to get an understanding of the equipment you're using and why you're using it, and maybe even opens up other options, because when you learn that way, you start to realize there's 3 or 4 different ways that this can be done. And I think that makes you an excellent teacher because you do it the way you do it.
Yeah, I'm a tinkerer. I'm a breaker and I'm like an explorer of stuff. Like I plug things in and see if it works, and oh, that's cool. I don't remember how I configured stuff. Like that's my biggest problem. I'm like a mad scientist sometimes, I think, with, I plug in equipment. I don't have a ton of equipment. I had a lot more than I needed, and I ended up getting rid of a lot of stuff. I really keep things pretty basic. But in terms of like my recorder and all that stuff, like I love trying to figure out how to get my phone to work with the mixer with, in different little configurations. And you could watch a million tutorials, but until you start plugging in the buttons and hearing if it sounds good, like you're never going to really do it, And it's not as scary as people think. I think I have a thing for the underdog. So like the reason I like the motivation stuff is like I like to really kind of encourage the people who are afraid of things, because it's not as scary or as hard as a lot of things make it seem, like in terms of like plugging in the equipment and all that. I think it's just a matter of like kind of just plugging a few things in, and like you don't need a lot of stuff to make a podcast. You don't need a lot of stuff to to do this stuff, you know. And I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people who are stuck in that, and I feel like the technical thing should be the last thing people should worry about. But I don't know. Maybe that's because I'm I like to play with it, but I don't know. It just seems to be like it always bugs me when that's the problem, because I feel like showing up every week is harder. Writing the content is a lot harder. Like all that stuff is so much harder than just plugging in this stuff. This is the easy part to me.
Well, you know, yeah, and I agree with you, and I try to see it your way too. I think that like when it came to the audio, the reason why I kept bumping it, it was what you're talking about. It was avoiding the tech and putting it off, and that's kind of why I did Cliff's class, and I love Cliff. I've met him on one occasion, and we've talked back and forth, and just a super guy. And anybody out there who's looking to get help starting podcasting, if you're having trouble like Mike or I are talking about, Cliff is a great place to go for inspiration. And if you want to take his class, I'm a paid member. I thought it was fabulous and well worth the money, because in 30 days I went from 0 to excellent as far as the equipment and the sound went. But it is tough when I was a techie in 1983 when the Apple IIe came out. Then IBM came out in the 90s, or the PC, and I started losing ground. And as the years went by, I'm now 46 years old. As the years went by, I find that, I probably behave about electronic equipment the way my parents did when in 1983, where it's like, it's tough. You don't understand. And so it's, I do what I can to counter it. It looks like, you do the same thing, but I can see people who have day jobs, who have children or whatever, not having the time. I know when I put my studio together, I was constantly going back and forth to Guitar Center. I was constantly sending packages back and forth with Amazon, trying to figure this stuff out. And it was tedious work. It wasn't that it was hard. It was tedious work. And little things could take a week to solve. And it would be like one little thing that would just disrupt your whole ability to broadcast. And by the time you figured it out, it was like one check the box on a software program or one button on a mixer or something. So I think that's what a lot of people have trouble with, is they know going in it's going to be like that.
Yeah, and it can be. I don't mean to downplay it to the point of where, like, there is some learning for sure. There's a learning curve with everything.
Right.
But it just seems the part that shouldn't really prevent people from doing it, because, like, I see video as being really challenging. I have a hard time with certain people, like, unless you're doing like your iPhone video, like I think there is a challenge to learning how to edit video, and that I make videos every day, and I don't even consider myself super video guy. I do it, but like I can see people really struggling with how to do that. But in terms of the equipment for today to get going, I feel like you can do it fairly quickly. And again, I don't consider myself really super gadget guy. I just think I don't have the fear of jumping in, I guess, is the thing. I don't have the fear of experimenting. In fact, that's probably what I like to do more than.
Well, it's what drives you, and I think that's what makes you a good educator, and it makes you good at your craft. I'll tell you, there's a few of us that think that you're a super video creator, so don't sell yourself short, my friend. You've got you've got it. I know that the few people that I've talked to about your content, we're all dazzled. So. And we're all in your space in some ways or another. And so if we're dazzled, then that means that the consumer out there, people trying to get started or thinking about getting started, they're going to be dazzled as well. I mean, you make superior content, and it's only going to get better, period.
I mean, I don't know how to respond to things like that. I get embarrassed with things like that.
Well, don't worry about it. We're among friends, and I sincerely believe that, and I hope that you when you hear from me or Ross or Peter Nez or whoever, And we talk to you about what you're doing and encourage you and give you the props. Hopefully that just is something that, just inspires you to even take it further, which I don't think you really need to hear from us to do that in any way, but it's support. It's letting you know, hey, you're doing a great job, buddy.
It does mean a lot to me. I'm not good at like sometimes expressing stuff like that, but it means a ton. And if anyone's listening, honestly, with the audio, with the video, even though I had a lot of experience with like Adobe stuff, I didn't have a lot of experience making, like, I do a lot of my videos now in After Effects. I literally just taught myself that right before Christmas. I'd never really used it. It's coming from making stuff every single day. Like, that is truly why I can make videos now, is because that's all I do is make videos every day. I didn't know how to do it a year ago. Like, I kind of knew how to dabble in it, but I didn't really know much. So, like, I'm a really big believer that if you kind of have something that you're interested in, like you have to just do it, or else, like, it's amazing how much I've grown just from doing stuff every day. Like, I can't even like exaggerate how much better I've gotten at the things that I used to be like just kind of knew about. And it's amazing, like the amount of time that I've grown, or the short amount of time that I've gotten so much better just from actually jumping in and doing it. It's kind of unbelievable. And I think that's sort of the magic thing, and it's not easy always, but
well, you know what, your timing is fantastic. You probably agree with this to some degree or another, but with the live video coming into play, I mean, YouTube's been around for over 10 years, but with live video coming into play and the way all the social media is working now and how people are choosing to engage now, video is really becoming way more mainstream than it ever was. I mean, YouTube has been huge for the creators that have been on there, and they've been very fortunate. They got started early, but, I would submit that video's just getting started. Even on YouTube, video's just getting started, because the live and the recorded and the mobile phones, and you take it anywhere, and GoPros and jumping out of planes with live. And I mean, it's all coming together, and people are just embracing it from every direction. And the skills that you're learning and teaching to yourself and sharing with others are extremely and are going to continue to become more and more important to everyone as time goes by.
I mean, it's funny. The things that I'm doing now, I look at honestly as like practice for me. And like, I feel like I'm just learning the things that everyone, like, and I'm teaching the things I think that everyone is going to be using on such a regular basis without even, whether they know it or not. Like, I mean, I definitely keep my finger on the pulse of like the online world. But yeah, I feel like everything we're doing kind of that is such at the early stage right now. And I feel like you have to jump in, because whether you know it or not, you're going to be doing this stuff. Like, we don't even know how to react if somebody's not on video anymore. Like, we just, like, you need people to move, or else we're like, what's going on, So, and I don't, yeah, I think you're right. I think we're at the very early stage of a lot of things. I think YouTube is going to look totally different here real soon. I think Facebook is going to look different. I think everything is going to look, I feel like everything is in this middle of a transition here, and we're all just kind of like, I think everyone who's trying and getting their feet wet are going to be really thankful they did, eventually.
I agree completely. It's video. I mean, everything is becoming video now in so many ways. And I mean, I've only been doing this since 2015, and I've been online for many, many years. I got on eBay, and I was a huge eBay guru in 1998 and sold tons of stuff and made tons of money on random things. I was kind of a news picker. I'd see something on the news, and they'd talk about something that was going to be in low demand. And no, I'm not talking Xboxes and everyone's standing in line and I'm selling one Xbox, but for instance, when President Obama was running, before he was president, there was a New Yorker magazine that had him on the cover that was controversial. And I knew that magazine was going to be hot, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I found tons of them when I was flying behind the security at Hudson News and made a fortune. I mean, I bought like 1,000 copies. I could barely get them out of the airport. I mean, I just spent a fortune buying these magazines. But so I've been online for a long time, and but online in the capacity that I'm in, 2015, and in this short period of time, what I've seen in video has dramatically changed in a short period of time. And it concerns me that people who shun it, who, oh, I'm not good in front of the camera. I mean, it's going to be sink or swim in a few years. And there's going to be somebody that you're competing with that's going to be killing it in video, on social, YouTube, whatever. And if you're not doing it, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I don't want people to panic either. Like,
No.
feel like there's time, and you know, you got to kind of feel. I think you have to feel out what you're comfortable in too, and that's a lot of what I do also. My whole journey of everything is just really trying to get myself in that sort of spot where I feel like I'm needed and that I'm comfortable doing, and you know, like it's a good fit. And I think a lot of people need to do that with video. Like, I'm not super comfortable with video. But yet I don't really have a fear of, like, I don't have a fear of a lot of things that some people do. But it's not my comfort zone to do the live stream necessarily. Like, it's not the thing that I'm craving to do. But I think the biggest thing is if you have something to say, if you have something that you think is going to be good, like, you have no choice almost but to at least create stuff that people can see it and hear it. You're going to go crazy because you're going to keep it inside. And video is really the only way that you can sort of get your message out today in an effective way, I think. So, yeah, I think people should at least start testing the waters.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if other people are out there, I mean, with video, you can make people feel like it's one-on-one. You can make people feel like you're talking directly to them. They can get a really good sense of who you are. And decide, is this a guy I'm going to be comfortable with, or girl I'm comfortable with, or is this do I need to move on and find somebody else? I think that people subconsciously find all sorts of reasons to like people. I have a Southern accent. People might be repelled by that. Other people might find that comfortable. And video allows people to, I mean, it's like changing the channel on a television. We've been doing that since the advent of the TV, and you're finding something that you're comfortable with. And I agree, there's no reason to panic, but on the other hand, people who have kind of been thinking about it and, just roll the dice and take your time and think about it, but dip your toe in the water, take that first little toe plunge and see what happens.
Yeah. 'Cause I think it takes a long time to actually, even just the technical stuff. I think it takes a long time to sort of figure it out. I think we're in the early stages. Like, I think doing these live streams are going to get so much easier. Like, I feel like they're still kind of a pain in the butt, to be quite honest with you. Like, a lot of like the having to do like Wirecast or OBS and some of the stuff, I feel like there's a lot of hoops that we're doing. I think in a year or two, we're going to look back and be like, I remember when I had to, sign up for 4 different, I think that part's going to get a lot easier. I think we're already getting easier and easier with, when you pick up your phone now, it's like you expect to be able to just drop a video in 4 different places or edit it, or, I mean, like, that wasn't the case a year ago. It's amazing how much more like I am now, like, just expecting to figure something. I'll be able to figure that out somehow. I know this must do this at some point, or and I think it's just going to get easier and easier, and then I think people are going to start creating more, and so.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, in winding down, I do have something that you said earlier today, and I want to ask you about it. So, you were an English major. I was too. Did you ever see yourself doing what you're doing today when you went and decided you were going to be an English major?
Sure. I mean, I sort of. I mean, not exactly, but I think I've always had a teacher mentality, which I sort of look at myself at in some regards, I guess. I kind of see myself as like an online educator. I've always had that tendency to sort of help people, or to sort of, I'm a problem solver, I think. And I feel like that's where the English, my mind sort of went there, as being like teacher, literary kind of person. I always had this teacher sort of thing in my head. I didn't want to be a teacher per se, but I'm not entirely sure what I thought was going to happen, to be honest with you, being an English major. I don't know if you felt the same way.
You know what? The only reason why I think I decided to be an English major is, well, I was always good at writing.
Yeah, me
but
too.
English 102, I think I took a final or a midterm. I took a midterm, and we had been drinking pitchers that day and playing pool. And I probably shouldn't have taken a midterm. I ended up getting 100 on it, and people who knew I had been drinking were dazzled. And I was like, you know what, this is really my calling. If I can, this guy was tough. This was like a tough teacher too, and I wrote this amazing paper for this midterm, and it was a good choice for me. I don't think I gave it a lot of thought as far as what am I going to do with it to provide for my family someday. I ultimately went to law school. I don't do that anymore either. So, it's all been a good part of my journey. But, I always like when I hear of somebody else being an English major, and I wonder what their thoughts were when they were doing it. Mine was simply a fluke based off one exam.
Law school was on my path, quite honestly.
Was it?
Yeah, law school was where I was headed. In fact, I went back years later to go to law school, and I went to do a dual major, and I got the first half of I got my MBA at the law school, and I was going to the JD program, and I didn't go. So which I didn't want to get $200,000 in debt at age 40 or whatever, late 30s. So I said, the law school thing is out.
Well, I can say wise move. I'm happy that with the education that I have, I don't look at it as wasted time, maybe wasted money, but not wasted time. You can't look, I mean, you can look back and wave your fist at various things in your life, the choices that you made, and what good is that going to do, really? Right?
Anything that I learn or anything that I do that requires thinking, like going through school, I don't care what it is, like going through college, like might not help you get a job in college, but the thinking to me is like everything. I mean, I learn how to think when I every tutorial I make, I become better at thinking and, figuring out how to get something in a minute. Like all that stuff matters. It matters in everything you do, I think. So I figure if you're learning something, like it's never gonna be a waste of time. So
Absolutely. Well, Mike, tell the folks where they can find. We've kind of already gone through it, but tell the folks where they can find you on the various platforms where you're putting your content, and if you've got anything else that's on the horizon, feel free to include that.
Well, my website is mikemurphy.co, so that's where the Mike Murphy Co. comes from. I don't put everything on there. It's mostly just my podcast. Right now, I'm actually transferring all my videos and stuff on there. I'm in that process. But Instagram, I'm at Mike Unplugged. Twitter, Mike Unplugged. YouTube, you can get me mikemurphy.co/YouTube will get me to my YouTube channel. And I'm on Facebook, Mike Murphy Co. I think you can find me. And yeah, so I'm around. You can find most of my links right from mikemurphy.co if you go there. That'll direct you to all my places. But yeah, and I will see you, I think, in a couple of weeks here in Podcast Movement. I'm actually really excited. I'm excited to connect with people. Like I'm going there to just see people face to face, and I'm excited for that.
Absolutely. Well, I've found that, I know you've done some events too, and so you've got your experiences, and our experiences are probably aligned somewhat, but I find the values in the hall, and yes, networking is a huge part of it. In fact, I learn more and gain more from shaking hands and talking to people than I do sitting in on the presentations.
Yeah, I'm excited for just that connection. I think it's going to be good.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to seeing you there, Mike. Folks, and thank you, Mike, for being on the program today. I know that you're a busy man, and taking the time out of your day to be on my program, it's a great honor, and I hope to have you back sometime.
Anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be great. And folks, as you know, we are, well, maybe you don't, maybe you came in late. We are quadcasting and recording for a podcast for iTunes. The quadcast includes YouTube Live, Periscope, Facebook Live, and Instagram Live. The podcast will be online within the next couple of weeks on iTunes. I've got about 10 shows to upload once I jump through all the hoops to set up the show, so stay tuned for that. Thank you, as always, for watching. Please, on iTunes, like, review, and subscribe. You can reach me at Todd.LIVE. That is a website, Todd.LIVE. You can email me through that website, Todd@Todd.LIVE is my email address. You can reach me through any of the social media channels. You can search Todd.LIVE on any of them, and you can pretty much find me anywhere. But I greatly appreciate your time listening to my podcast and spending time with both Mike and myself today. Please reach out anytime to either Mike or myself. We're both available pretty much on all these channels. And the next podcast will be coming soon. Stay tuned, folks. Thanks again, and take care. And for those of you that are with us on live video, I'm going to start closing them out. Mike, if you want to hang out for just a minute as I close these down, we can chat after it's over. And folks on live video, thank you for joining me. If you're watching me in replay, Mike and I on replay, or if you were with us for the live, I think most people have cleared out now. Thank you for spending time with us today. Please share, leave a comment below. Let us know that you were here. If you've got a question for Mike, leave a comment and just tag him in it. And I'm sure he'd be happy to come and answer. So I'm going to start closing out the feeds. Mike, I'll let you know when they're all shut down.